Well, one of the, the things I love about your playing so much is that you're, well, first there's so much, but like when I got that Jazz is Dead record, I mean, it's just magnificent. I mean, it's one thing to go live and play great live and all that kind of stuff, but in the studio,
yeah,
to come up with the parts, the tones, and solos that are perfect. I mean, I would recommend to anybody to get that Jazz is Dead record. It is just a feast of good. I mean, and I'm not the hugest Dead fan in the world. I mean, as you know, T. Lavitz and I were buddies, and I know when T put that, was part of putting the initial aggregation of Jazz is Dead. I was like, "You're doing what? Well, we're doing these Dead tunes," and all of a sudden I was like, well, those tunes are cool now. I mean, that's not I mean, I know there's huge Dead fans, and there is stuff that I've listened to that I've really, really enjoyed. I don't want to be one of these, I'm not being a snob or whatever,
and I was with you. I didn't really, that wasn't my thing per se, but and I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no, that's all right. I'm glad you came to my rescue, to be honest.
Well, it's like. There's all different styles of music out there. And for guys like you and I, probably listening to Steely Dan and listening to, records that really featured great guitar playing. Of course, the Allman Brothers, which was a huge influence probably on you and I. The Fillmore East record was guitar lessons for me for a year. I had to sit down and, ingest every lick on that record. But the legacy of the Dead is what it is. And in fact, it was very interesting when our bass player, Alphonso Johnson from Weather Report, was like, this body of music is incredible. And I was like, well, if Alphonso Johnson from Weather Report is saying that, this might be pretty cool.
Right.
And there are some very interesting compositions. But the things that we did with them were to take the initial vibe and totally turn it around. So like a sugar magnolia, blossoms blooming, turned into playing it on slide like Little Feet. And, we took a lot of artistic license while trying to honor the melodies, but bringing it somewhere else. And as you mentioned, you listened to the Grateful Jazz record, which is the fourth record that Jazz is Dead ever did. And I produced it and arranged it with T, and T isn't around anymore, so I miss him greatly. Right. And interestingly, I was going through a big box of old tax receipts, and I got because I needed to just throw stuff out. You're supposed to only keep it for a few years, and I get to the bottom, and there was a whole treasure trove of videos I had taken on the Jazz is Dead tours, on the making the CPR records. I had lost this stuff, or I thought I lost it. I couldn't find it for over a decade. And right now, as we speak, I'm
converting it,
transferring it to digital. And there is stuff with Rod Morgenstein and T. Lavitz and Alphonso Johnson and I, as well as the other band, which was Kenny Gradney from Little Feat, Billy Cobham, T. Lavitz, and I. I have numerous gigs, and I will be posting some stuff.
Excellent.
Yeah. So I was really honored to get asked to do that gig. And as you probably know, when you're playing with musicians who challenge you, you play over your head.
Right.
When you're playing with guys who aren't really, dare I say, as good, or let's just say someone that doesn't kind of get you going, then you can kind of stay a little complacent. And when I got a call to be in a band with Rod Morgenstein, T. Lavitz, Alphonso Johnson, I was like, what? Where do I audition? And the guy goes, no, you got the gig if you want it. I'm like, oh my God. So I got very proactive into arranging the material to make sure it was something I could actually play. Because I know T. Lavitz and Rod are used to working with Steve Morris.
Right.
I like that. I mean, in my dreams, I don't play like that. And I have such great respect for that.
That Dixie Dreg stuff is, that's highly arranged technically. I mean, it's sit with the metronome for God knows how long type of music.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, long story short, I have been so honored that is part of my legacy. And like I said, when I was on stage with those guys, it's time to go for it.
Right.
It's time to play over your head. And I was just listening to these tapes, and it's like, I didn't know I could play like that. I mean, they really kicked my butt to really pushing the boundaries. And it's kind of a lesson, that I learned from watching those tapes, and that is important to musicians who are aspiring musicians. You want to surround yourself with really accomplished musicians whenever you can. Not to say that playing with everyone and playing with musicians who might not be as stellar as, Alphonso Johnson isn't important too, because you learn from everything that you do, but the diversification and pushing yourself into uncomfortable territory. I did see this one fantastic video with a famous drummer, and this comment that he made that really stuck with me was, we practice so we can be comfortable when we're uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Isn't that great? So,
well, let me ask you this. So you grew up in Connecticut, right?
I attempted to.
Well, you grew physically. So how did you end up breaking into these larger nationally and internationally known ensembles? Did you move to LA at some point? Did you get picked up when you were in Connecticut? How did it all pan out?
Well, it's been said before, it's all who you know, or it's all if you are willing to create opportunities for yourself. So it's a combination. There's a combination of things. The very first big tour I ever got was with Rickie Lee Jones in 1983, and a childhood friend named Michael Ruff, who is a keyboard player, singer, songwriter, child prodigy. And his main instrument is keyboards, and he writes songs. He's written songs for numerous artists, including On the Nick of Time. He wrote Cry on My Shoulder for Bonnie Raitt.
Oh, yeah.
Michael is he's one of my dearest friends. And he moved to Woodstock and then moved to LA, and he was Rickie Lee Jones's band leader. And he called me up one day and he said, listen, if you want to fly yourself out, I'll get you an audition and you can stay on my couch, So I worked on the stuff, and I actually didn't do very well at the audition itself. I was really nervous. And they had another guy who was kind of in there doing some rehearsals. And Michael said, listen, stay in town, stay on my couch, keep working on the tunes. And about 4 days later, he goes, you're coming in today. It's not an audition. It's a rehearsal.
Uh-huh.
And I rehearsed, and then one thing led to another. And he basically got me the gig. He wanted his homeboy on the gig. And I feel like I was the right guy for the job. I was so green.
Sure, I got you.
So to answer your question, that one was because of who I knew, and because hopefully I had the goods. And I've seen, some videos of that first tour, and I think I did fine, and it's an ensemble is an ensemble. It's all these pieces. It's the synergy, of how people get along and the vibe. And, when I was rehearsing, it was just with the band, and all of a sudden the door opens and Rickie walks in, and we're playing this song called Weasel and the White Boys Cool from the first Rickie Lee Jones record. It's got this and she puts on her guitar and she starts walking towards me. And I'm like, oh shit. Walking towards me closer. And she's like right here. And then she put her head right next to me. And I'm freaking out inside, but I'm going, you want this gig? Just relax.
Right.
Be there for her. You know what I mean? And
right.
So I often use this analogy, the angel and the devil on the shoulder from Animal House, right, where you the different voices talking to
right.
you. And the devil's going, get the hell out of there. She's a weirdo or whatever. You can't deal with this intimacy, And the angel's going, just chill, Jeff. This is your gig, man. Just be there for her. Support her,
Right.
And I often confront those voices when I'm feeling doubtful about my abilities. And you have the opportunity to listen to whatever voices you have. Right. It's not like those voices aren't important or part of your psyche, but there's something to be said about, being your own best friend instead of your own worst enemy.
Right. Exactly.
And there's a great Ray Charles story, but it's a little lengthy, so maybe we should.
No, that's all right. Bring it. Bring on the Ray Charles story.
All right. Well, I'm very proud of this story. It's a wonderful story.